Devil May Cry, The Legend of Sparda. 2,000 years before the modern age, in an era lost to mortal memory, the world existed in a state of perpetual shadow. Humanity cowered beneath the oppressive reign of the demon world, as hordes of hellish creatures poured forth from the netherworld to claim dominion over all they surveyed. At the helm of this dark empire stood Mundus, the Prince of Darkness himself, a demon emperor of such terrible might that his very name inspired dread across both worlds. His ambition was absolute: to unite the human world and the demon world once more into a single dominion under his eternal rule. But within the ranks of Mundus's own forces stood a demon who would change everything. His name was Sparda, the most powerful demon swordsman in all the netherworld, and he served as the right hand of the Dark Emperor. Among demons, Sparda was known not only for his unmatched skill with a blade but also for his role as a mentor. He trained two demon warriors, twin brothers named Baal and Modius, and to the kind-hearted Modius, he entrusted his true teachings and his greatest secrets. In the demon world, Sparda's prowess was legendary. They called him the best swordsman that realm had ever known. Yet something stirred within Sparda's ancient heart. As he witnessed the subjugation of humanity, as he saw the cruelty and tyranny of the Dark Emperor's vision, something awakened in him that no demon had ever felt before. In the chronicles of that age, it is said simply that Sparda woke up to justice. He looked upon the human world not with the contempt of his kind, but with something akin to compassion, perhaps even admiration. Where other demons saw weakness, Sparda saw potential. Where they saw prey, he saw something worth protecting. And so, in an act of rebellion that would echo through the millennia, Sparda turned against his own kind. The legendary Dark Knight, as he would come to be known, stood alone against the entirety of the demon world's armies. What followed was a war unlike any the world had seen before or since. Sparda fought not with an army at his back, but with his power alone, wielding his incredible strength and masterful swordsmanship against countless legions of hellspawn. The demons fell before him like wheat before the scythe. His blade sang through the air, cutting down everything that stood between him and his ultimate goal, Mundus himself. The battle between Sparda and the Dark Emperor was one of apocalyptic proportion. Two beings of godlike power clashed in combat that shook the very foundations of reality. But when the dust settled, it was Sparda who stood victorious. He sealed the defeated Mundus away in a marble vault, condemning the tyrant to imprisonment in the depths of the demon world. The remnants of Mundus's once mighty army fled in terror, retreating back through the gateway to their own realm. But Sparda knew that victory in battle was not enough. The gateway between worlds, the great tower called Demon Emperor, remained open, and so long as it did, the demon world would always threaten humanity. To truly protect the human world, he would have to seal the portal forever. This task required more than simple force. It required sacrifice. In the depths of the Demon Emperor, in a chamber meant for the most sacred and terrible of rituals, Sparda prepared to enact the seal. He was not alone in this endeavor. By his side stood a human priestess, a woman of great courage and purity of spirit whose name has been lost to history, though her bloodline would continue through the centuries. Together, they performed a ritual of immense power and terrible cost. Sparda let his own demonic blood flow, the essence of his power pouring out to feed the seal. The priestess, knowing full well what was required, gave her life to the ritual, her blood mingling with Sparda's to create an unbreakable bond between sacrifice and salvation. Into this seal, Sparda poured his beloved sword, a blade that bore his very name. He channeled his immense demonic energy into the weapon, using it as a conduit to close the door between the two realms. The Demon Emperor, once a bridge between worlds, became a prison, sealed shut by the combined power of demon and human, of darkness and light. But the cost of this seal was steep. By imprisoning his power within the sword and the ritual, Sparda robbed himself of the vast majority of his demonic abilities. The demon who had defeated an emperor and turned the tide of an entire war was diminished, his godlike strength now locked away. Sensing that his own power had grown too formidable, too dangerous even in the service of good, he made the conscious choice to seal himself as well, ensuring that no one, not even he himself, could undo what had been done. To strengthen the seal even further, Sparda took additional measures. He imprisoned the gatekeepers of the tower within its depths: Cerberus, the three-headed guardian beast; Agni and Rudra, the twin swords of fire and wind; Nevin, the lightning witch; Beowulf, the light beast; and Leviathan, the consuming darkness. He confiscated the names of demons who resembled fallen angels, those representing the 7 deadly sins, binding them as additional locks upon the tower's power. His work complete, Sparda eventually escaped from the prison he had helped create, though the manner of his escape remains shrouded in mystery. He emerged into the human world not as the demon warrior who had conquered armies, but as something else entirely. Having given up his demonic permanence, his immortal nature, Sparda chose to live as a human. He shed his demon form and walked among humanity in the guise of a man, tall and handsome, with slicked-back white hair and piercing blue eyes, dressed in the fashion of the Victorian era he would later inhabit. For 2,000 years, Sparda's influence touched the human world in subtle ways. For a time, he quietly reigned over humanity, not as a conqueror but as a protector, preserving the harmony between the worlds and ensuring that the seal he had created remained intact. In the region of Fortuna, he would later be known as the feudal lord, a figure of legend who defended the people from demonic threats. But Sparda's most significant act in the human world was yet to come. He fell in love with a human woman named Eva, and together they forged a bond that transcended the boundaries between their worlds. Their union was unprecedented, a demon choosing not just to protect humanity but to join with it, to become a part of it. Sparda married Eva, choosing humanity not out of obligation or strategy, but out of love. Before his ultimate fate, before he vanished from the world under circumstances that remain unclear to this day, Sparda took steps to divide his power in a way that would shape events for millennia to come. He created 3 legendary weapons, each a repository of a portion of his incredible strength, each imbued with a specific purpose and will. The first was the Force Edge, which held the dormant, sealed form of his power. This blade, plain and unremarkable in appearance, was in truth the vessel containing the lion's share of his demonic strength, locked away and waiting. The Force Edge was designed to be a safeguard, its true power inaccessible unless specific conditions were met. To awaken it, one would need the Perfect Amulet, a mystical ornament that Sparda had created and given to Eva as a gift. This amulet, a large red gem set into elegant metalwork, could be split into 2 halves. Within its crystal heart resided something precious, the soul of the priestess who had sacrificed herself alongside Sparda to seal the Temenen. Her essence, preserved in the amulet, served as the key to unlock the true power of the Force Edge, transforming it into the Devil Sword Sparda, a weapon of world-shaking might. The second weapon Sparda created was Yamato, a dark-forged katana of elegant design and terrible purpose. Named to embody a god of death, the Yamato possessed the power to cut through anything, to divide and separate that which should not be joined. It had the will and strength to sever man from demon, to split apart the very essence of beings and objects. This blade, slender and precise, represented the power of separation and judgment. Later, Sparda would use the Yamato to seal another pathway to hell in the city of Fortuna, demonstrating that the blade's power extended beyond mere cutting to the manipulation of dimensional barriers themselves. The third weapon was Rebellion, a massive greatsword with a distinctive skeletal guard. On each side of the guard was a skull design that led to a rib cage from which the blade emerged. On one side, the skull was human, on the other, it bore demonic horns. This visual represented the blade's true nature and purpose. While the Yamato could separate man from demon, the Rebellion was crafted to do the opposite, to unite them, to bring together the human and demonic into a single, unified force. Sparda named this sword to embody retaliation, a weapon of defiance and resistance. Though it appeared as a standard longsword, the Rebellion was a magical blade whose true power lay dormant, waiting for the moment when it would be needed most. These 3 weapons, the trinity of Sparda's power, were more than mere tools of war. They were philosophical statements, embodiments of concepts that Sparda had come to understand through his long existence. The necessity of sealing away power that is too great, the importance of division and separation when needed, and the potential strength that comes from uniting opposing forces. Each blade represented a different facet of Sparda's understanding of the world and his place within it. Eva, the woman who had captured the heart of the legendary Dark Knight, received the Perfect Amulet as a gift from her husband. Years later, on the 8th birthday of the twin sons she bore him, sons named Dante and Vergil, Eva would make a choice that echoed Sparda's own understanding of divided power. She split the Perfect Amulet into its 2 halves, giving one to each boy. On the back of each half, she had their names engraved, ensuring that these pieces of their father's legacy would be unmistakably theirs. The swords, too, were divided between the twins. To Vergil, the elder by mere moments, went the Yamato, the blade of separation and precision. To Dante went Rebellion, the sword of unity and defiance. The Force Edge, that dormant vessel of Sparda's greatest power, would eventually come into their possession as well, though the path to that inheritance would be fraught with tragedy. Sparda himself would not live to see his sons grow into the warriors they would become. At some point in the modern era, under circumstances that remain mysterious, the legendary Dark Knight met his end. Whether he died of age, having lived as a human for so long, or met some other fate, none can say with certainty. What is known is that his disappearance left Eva and the twins vulnerable. The legend of Sparda did not end with his death. It lived on in the weapons he created, in the seal he placed upon the demon world, and most importantly, in the blood that flowed through the veins of his half-human sons. The power he had locked away, the strength he had divided, and the wisdom he had gained would all play their parts in the struggles to come. 2,000 years after a demon turned against his own kind to save humanity, the echoes of that choice still reverberate through the world. The Demon Emperor stands sealed, bound by blood and sacrifice. The weapons of Sparda wait, dormant powers ready to awaken when the time is right. And the legacy of the legendary Dark Knight endures, a testament to the idea that even the darkest beings can choose the light, and that true power comes not from domination, but from sacrifice. This is the foundation upon which all other tales of the Devil May Cry are built. This is the legend that shapes the destiny of all who carry Sparda's blood. This is the story of how one demon's choice to wake up to justice changed the fate of two worlds forever. The artifacts of this era remain, scattered through time and space. The Force Edge waits to be awakened. The Perfect Amulet, split in two, holds the key to that awakening. The Yamato and Rebellion, given to sons who would one day wield them in conflicts that would determine the future of humanity itself, carry within them the essence of their father's understanding. And somewhere, in the sealed darkness of the demon world, Mundus waits, imprisoned but not destroyed, dreaming of the day when the seal might break and he could once again reach for the dominion that Sparda denied him. But that is a story for another time. For now, let us remember the legend of Sparda, the demon who became humanity's greatest protector, the warrior who sacrificed his power for the sake of the weak, the Dark Knight who turned his back on an empire to stand alone for justice. His name is legend. His deeds echo through eternity. And his legacy lives on, carried forward by those who would follow in his footsteps, whether they know it or not. This is the distant past of Devil May Cry. This is where it all began. Devil May Cry, Mallet Island and the birth of the twins. While Sparda's seal held strong for 2 millennia, keeping the gateway between worlds firmly closed, darkness has a way of finding cracks through which to seep. Far from the mainland, shrouded in mist and legend, there existed an island that would become synonymous with dread and demonic power. This place, known as Mallet Island, became the stage for Mundus's patient, terrible vengeance. Though Sparda had defeated the Dark Emperor and sealed him away in a marble vault deep within the demon world, Mundus was not destroyed. His consciousness endured, trapped but aware, dreaming of the day when he might once again reach the human world. And in his imprisonment, he found a way to extend his influence, to corrupt and to wait. The seal that bound him to the demon world was absolute, but his power could still touch the edges of reality, whispering through the veil between dimensions to those who would listen. On Mallet Island, humans began to hear those whispers. The island's inhabitants, isolated from the mainland and perhaps more susceptible to the supernatural, started to sense the presence of something vast and terrible lurking just beyond their perception. What began as dreams and visions soon evolved into something more sinister. The people of Mallet Island began to worship Mundus, revering him under the ancient name of Pluto, the god of the underworld. They spoke of prophecies, of the inevitable return of their dark deity who would one day cross back into the human world through their island, bringing with him a new age. This worship was not passive reverence. The islanders constructed elaborate temples and structures dedicated to their demon god. Ancient cults formed, their rituals growing darker with each passing year. Sacrificial altars were raised, stained with the blood of offerings meant to please the imprisoned emperor and hasten his return. The very soil of Mallet Island became tainted with these acts, saturated with malevolent energy that transformed the land itself. At the heart of the island, the cultists erected a massive cathedral, a monument to their devotion that towered over the landscape. This was no ordinary place of worship. The architecture defied conventional understanding, its halls and chambers seeming to shift and change, as if the building itself were alive and breathing. Within its depths, they constructed a Colosseum where demons could gather and celebrate their anticipated triumph over humanity. And deeper still, they built an underworld gate, a physical anchor point where Mundus's power could concentrate, where the barrier between worlds grew thin enough that his influence could bleed through more directly. The corruption spread beyond the structures humans built. The island's ecosystem itself began to warp under the weight of demonic energy. Trees twisted into unnatural shapes, their branches reaching like clawed hands toward the sky. The very earth seemed to pulse with malevolent life. Creatures that had once been ordinary animals became twisted mockeries of their former selves, possessed or transformed by the ambient demonic power that saturated every inch of the island. Perhaps most disturbing was the emergence of what came to be known as the Mirror World, a twisted reflection of reality that existed alongside the physical island. In this supernatural dimension, the architecture became even more nightmarish. Hallways stretched impossibly long, rooms existed in configurations that violated the laws of physics, and staircases led to destinations that shouldn't exist. The castle on Mallet Island became a labyrinth where the normal rules of space and time held no meaning, where corridors could lead back on themselves and doorways could open to entirely different locations depending on when they were passed through. Even more unsettling was the discovery of organic structures deep within the island. A living ship, constructed not from wood and metal but from flesh and sinew, pulsed with unholy life in the depths beneath the castle. The catacombs themselves seemed to be breathing, their walls expanding and contracting as if the island itself had become a massive, slumbering creature. These organic underworld foundations suggested that Mundus's corruption had gone so deep that the very substance of the island had been transformed into an extension of the demon world itself. The inhabitants who had begun this dark worship eventually vanished, their fate unknown but easily imagined. Perhaps they were consumed by the very forces they sought to serve, or perhaps they simply fled when they realized the magnitude of what they had unleashed. Whatever their end, Mallet Island became a place of desolation, a corrupted landscape where demons roamed freely and the boundary between the human world and the underworld had grown dangerously thin. It stood as a monument to Mundus's enduring influence, a foothold in the human realm where he could gather his strength and wait for the opportunity to break free of his bonds entirely. But while Mundus plotted and corrupted from his prison, unaware of the island's transformation, a different story was unfolding in the human world. Years after Sparda had sealed away his power and chosen to live as a human, he found something he never expected to find: love. Her name was Eva, and she was remarkable in her own right, a human woman of courage and compassion who saw past the legend and the mystery to the being beneath. How they met, the details of their courtship, these things are lost to history, but what is known is that Sparda, the demon who had turned against his own kind, fell deeply and completely in love with this human woman. And she, remarkably, loved him in return. Their union was unprecedented, a joining of demon and human not through conquest or corruption, but through genuine affection and mutual respect. Sparda married Eva, formally and completely choosing humanity not just as something to protect, but as something to join with, to become a part of. In Eva, Sparda found a reason beyond duty to embrace his adopted world. She represented everything he had fought to preserve: humanity's capacity for love, for hope, for beauty in the face of darkness. Together, they built a life. They resided in a mansion near what would later be known as Red Grave City, a secluded home where they could live in relative peace, away from the eyes of those who might recognize the legendary Dark Knight or seek to exploit his legacy. For a time, perhaps the first truly peaceful time in Sparda's long existence, life was good. Eva often spoke to others about her husband, describing him as a man of courage and a righteous heart, never revealing his true nature but always speaking of him with profound love and admiration. And then came the greatest miracle of all. Eva became pregnant, and in time, she gave birth not to one child, but to two. Twin boys, identical in appearance yet destined for vastly different paths. They were named Dante and Vergil, and they represented something that had never existed before in all of history. Beings who were neither fully human nor fully demon, but truly both. The blood of the legendary Sparda mixed with the humanity of Eva to create something new, something unprecedented. The twins grew up in that secluded mansion, and for their early years, life was happy. Sparda trained them in the art of combat, teaching them to wield swords and to understand the warrior's path, though for much of their childhood, Dante and Vergil didn't realize their father was anything other than human. It's said that young Dante would cry whenever Sparda raised his voice, a glimpse of the more sensitive nature that hid beneath his future bravado. The boys would fight with each other the way brothers do, competing and struggling but ultimately bound by their twin connection. Vergil, born first by mere moments and thus the elder twin, showed early signs of his serious nature. He found himself drawn to literature and poetry, spending time reading the works of William Blake and other great writers, eventually coming to possess a treasured collection of Blake's poems. There was something in him that seemed to recognize the weight of his heritage, even if he didn't yet understand what that heritage meant. As the twins approached their 8th birthday, Eva made a decision that would echo through the decades to come. She took the Perfect Amulet, that mystical artifact that Sparda had given her as a gift, and she split it into its 2 halves. On the back of each half, she had the twins' names engraved. To Dante, she gave 1 half of the amulet, a piece of their father's legacy and their family's power. To Vergil, she gave the other half. It was meant to be a symbol of their connection, two halves of a whole, brothers bound together by blood and by the artifacts they carried. Around this same time, tragedy struck in a way that would define everything that followed. Sparda disappeared under circumstances that remain mysterious to this day. Whether he simply wandered off and died of old age, having lived as a human for so long, or whether something more sinister occurred, none can say with certainty. What is known is that his absence left Eva and the twins vulnerable in ways they had not been before. The protection of the legendary Dark Knight, the deterrent that his mere existence represented to the forces of darkness, was suddenly gone. And Mundus, imprisoned but ever watchful, recognized the opportunity. He had not forgotten his defeat at Sparda's hands. He had not forgotten the humiliation of being sealed away by one of his own servants. And now, with Sparda gone, the Dark Emperor saw his chance for revenge. He could not strike at Sparda directly, but he could do something far more cruel. He could destroy everything Sparda had loved. He could tear apart the family the legendary Dark Knight had built and erase his very memory from the world. The attack came on what should have been a day of celebration. On the twins' 8th birthday, perhaps even on the very day Eva had given them their amulet halves, demons descended upon the mansion. The assault was sudden and overwhelming, a coordinated strike designed not just to kill but to obliterate any trace of Sparda's legacy. They set fire to parts of the home, demons pouring through the halls with orders to murder Eva and capture or kill the children. Eva's response in those terrible moments revealed the depth of her courage and her love. As the mansion came under attack, as the air filled with smoke and the screams of demons, she found Dante. There are different accounts of exactly where he was or what transpired, but what is known is that Eva hid her younger son, secreting him away in a closet or some other concealed location. She looked into his eyes, perhaps seeing in them the face of the man she loved, and she told him to run if she never returned. It was a mother's desperate attempt to save at least one of her children, a sacrifice made with full knowledge of what it would cost her. And then Eva went looking for Vergil. She ran through the burning mansion, calling out his name, searching desperately for her other son even as demons closed in around her. She loved both of her children equally, fiercely, without reservation or favoritism. The idea that she might have preferred one twin over the other is false, a misconception that would haunt Vergil in the years to come. Eva died looking for him, died trying to save him, her last moments spent in desperate search of the son she feared she had lost. The demons found her before she could find Vergil. They cut her down, ending the life of the woman who had captured the heart of the legendary Dark Knight, the woman who had given birth to two beings of unprecedented power. Eva's death was not just a personal tragedy but a cosmic one, the destruction of innocence and love by the forces of hatred and revenge. Vergil's exact whereabouts during the attack remained shrouded in mystery. Some accounts suggest he was captured by the demons, taken as a prize or a hostage. Others hint that he may have been elsewhere when the attack began, returning to find his home destroyed and his mother gone. What is certain is that Vergil survived the night, but the trauma of it, the loss of his mother and the failure to protect her, planted seeds of darkness in his heart that would grow in the years to come. He emerged from that night changed, hardened, driven by a desperate need for power born from the helplessness he felt when he needed strength most. As for Dante, he remained hidden where his mother had placed him, following her final instruction as the sounds of destruction and death echoed through his childhood home. When silence finally fell and he emerged, it was to find his life irrevocably shattered. His mother was dead. His brother was gone, seemingly killed in the attack. His home was destroyed, burned and defiled to erase any trace of his father's memory. In the aftermath, Dante believed he was alone. He assumed Vergil had died alongside their mother, killed by the same demonic forces that had taken Eva. This belief, this certainty that he had lost his entire family in one terrible night, would shape the path Dante took in the years that followed. Following his mother's last wish, he adopted a new identity, hiding from the demons that might still hunt him. He called himself Anthony Redgrave, going by Tony, a name that had no connection to Sparda or the legendary legacy he carried. The attack had accomplished much of what Mundus intended. Sparda's family was scattered, his home destroyed, his memory defiled. But it had not accomplished everything. The twins survived, carrying within them their father's demonic blood and their mother's human spirit. And perhaps most importantly, they each still possessed half of the Perfect Amulet, the key to unlocking their father's sealed power. There was also a prophecy, whispered among demons and those who knew the old legends. It spoke of the son of Sparda, a being who would one day possess power equal to or perhaps even surpassing the legendary Dark Knight himself. Mundus knew of this prophecy, feared it, which is why he had struck at the twins while they were still children, before they could grow into their full potential. But the prophecy had not specified which son it would be, or whether both might fulfill it in time. And so the seeds of future conflict were sown. As Dante grew older, separated from his brother and carrying the weight of his family's destruction, he found meaning in one particular choice: his red coat. In Japanese culture, red is the traditional color of the hero, a symbol of courage and righteousness. When Dante finally reclaimed his true name and began his life as a demon hunter, he chose to wear red clothing, long coats that flowed behind him like a cape, a visual declaration of his choice. The red represented his decision to embrace his humanity, to follow his mother's example of courage and love rather than seeking power for its own sake. It was a rejection of the path his brother would take, though Dante didn't yet know Vergil lived. And the perfect amulet halves, those pieces of his father's legacy that Eva had given them on that final birthday, proved to be more than just keepsakes. They provided protection to the twins, a measure of defense against the demons that might hunt them. Dante wore his half always, a reminder of his mother and his lost family. Somewhere, Vergil carried his half as well, though what he made of it and what path he walked remained unknown to his brother. The stage was set. Mallet Island festered with corruption, a beacon calling to Mundus across the dimensional barrier. The twins had survived but were separated, each carrying half of their father's legacy and walking very different paths. The Dark Emperor remained imprisoned but not defeated, his influence still reaching into the human world, still plotting his return and his revenge. And the legend of Sparda endured, carried forward in the blood of his sons, waiting for the day when the prophecy of the son of Sparda would be fulfilled, for better or for worse. This is the foundation of conflict that would define the Devil May Cry saga. This is the personal tragedy that turned two brothers into the men they would become. This is the corruption that transformed an island into a foothold for hell itself. And this is the beginning of the path that would lead Dante, years later, back to that cursed island to face the demon who had destroyed his family and to discover the truth about his brother that he had long believed dead. For many years after the fire that claimed his mother and the disappearance of his brother, the son of Sparda did not exist. In his place was a shadow, a young man drifting through the seedy underbelly of the human world, moving from city to city like a ghost. He took the name Tony Redgrave. To the casual observer, it was just an alias, a mask to hide from the demons hunting him. But the name held a deeper, more painful meaning. It was a tribute to the village where he had once known peace, a way to carry the memory of his lost humanity without uttering the name Dante, which had become a beacon for the creatures of the night. As Tony, Dante lived the life of a high-end mercenary and fixer. He frequented a hole-in-the-wall bar called the 45 Works, a place where the air was thick with smoke and the smell of cheap whiskey. Even then, his prowess was unnatural. He was faster than sight, stronger than any man had a right to be, and possessed a constitution that allowed him to survive wounds that would have laid a battalion in the earth. Yet, he was careful. He lived by a strict code, often taking jobs that allowed him to clean up the literal and metaphorical messes of the underworld, all while keeping his true heritage buried under a red trench coat and a cynical smile. But Mundus, the Prince of Darkness, had not forgotten the blood of Sparda. From the depths of the netherworld, the Emperor sent hunters, not just warriors, but assassins designed to peel back Tony's mask. These encounters were frequent and bloody, forcing Dante into a perpetual state of vigilance. He couldn't afford to get close to anyone, for to be a friend of Tony Redgrave was to invite a death sentence from the shadows. It was during these lonely years that Dante found a kindred spirit in Nell Goldstein, a legendary gunsmith known as the Artisan of 45th Street. Nell was a woman of steel and fire, the only one who could see past Dante's bravado. She recognized that no standard firearm could withstand the raw power Dante channeled into his tools. Together, in the heat of her forge, they worked on a project that would define his legacy, the birth of ebony and ivory. These weren't just pistols, they were masterpieces of engineering, designed to fire at speeds and pressures that would shatter a normal gun. To Dante, they were his twin souls, ebony for long-range precision, ivory for rapid-fire instinct. But the creation of these weapons was stained with tragedy, as Mundus's reach eventually found Nell's shop, leaving Dante once again standing over the ashes of those who dared to care for him. Perhaps the darkest chapter of this era was the Gilva incident. Dante encountered a mysterious, masked mercenary named Gilva, a man who fought with a cold, surgical precision that felt hauntingly familiar. They were two sides of a coin, clashing in a series of brutal skirmishes that tore through the mercenary world. It was a calculated move by Mundus to break Dante's spirit, using a puppet that mirrored the brother he thought he had lost. By the time the mask fell and the dust settled, Dante was left more cynical, more hardened, and more convinced than ever that he was the only thing standing between humanity and the coming storm. Eventually, the mercenary life grew tired. The name Tony Redgrave was retired, and Dante decided to stop running. He found a small, nondescript office in a quiet corner of the city. He didn't need much, just a desk, a jukebox, and a place to keep his pizza warm. He named the shop Devil May Cry. The name was a philosophy, a quiet acknowledgement of his father's legacy. It was a promise that even a demon, if he possessed a heart, was capable of feeling the weight of the world, capable of shedding a tear for what was lost. He waited there, a hunter at rest, knowing that one day, the invitation to his final reckoning would walk through that door. While Dante sat in the quiet of his shop, the gears of the netherworld were turning with a terrifying, mechanical precision. Mundus was not merely sending scouts anymore, he was crafting a masterpiece of vengeance. On the forgotten shores of Mallet Island, a fortress was being prepared, a castle that existed between the realms of man and demon, filled with the shifting architecture of a nightmare. Mundus's first and most cruel creation for this trap was Trish. She was a puppet of bioorganic perfection, crafted in the exact likeness of Eva, Dante's long-dead mother. Mundus understood that Dante could not be defeated by strength alone, he had to be undone by his heart. Trish was designed to be the ultimate bait, the face of the woman Dante couldn't save, used as a weapon to lead him into the mouth of the beast. But even a god of darkness cannot fully predict the spark of a soul. As Trish was brought into existence, she began to develop something Mundus hadn't intended, a flickering of a heart, a sense of self that would eventually clash with her dark purpose. To ensure Dante's demise, Mundus positioned his most loyal generals across the island. There was Phantom, the volcanic spider guardian whose roar shook the earth, Griffin, the soaring thunderbird that patrolled the skies, and Shadow, the shape-shifting beast that moved through the castle walls like liquid ink. Each was a test, a way to drain Dante's strength before he reached the throne room. But the centerpiece of this dark army was a warrior known only as Nelo Angelo. Clad in heavy, obsidian armor and wielding a massive, glowing broadsword, Nelo Angelo moved with a noble, disciplined grace that defied his demonic nature. He was no mindless beast. He was a champion of the Dark Emperor, fueled by a corrupted essence that Mundus had harvested from the battlefield years prior. Inside that armor was the broken, twisted remains of Vergil, Dante's twin brother. Mundus had taken the proud son of Sparda and turned him into a hollow knight, a slave to his will, destined to face his own brother in a battle where neither would recognize the other until it was far too late. As the moon rose over Mallet Island, the stage was set. The demon army was in position, the trap was veiled with the face of a mother, and the corrupted brother stood watch in the courtyard. In the city, the neon sign of Devil May Cry flickered in the rain. Dante looked at the door, sensing the shift in the air. The legend of Sparda was about to enter its most violent chapter, and the son who had spent years hiding as Tony Redgrave was finally ready to face the Prince of Darkness. The legend of Dante truly begins not with a victory, but with a visitation. In the quiet, rain-slicked hours at his shop, the silence was shattered by a woman named Trish, crashing through his door upon a motorcycle, wielding the power of lightning and the face of his dead mother. She was the messenger of his destiny, warning him that the gates of the netherworld were straining at their hinges. She led him across the black waters of the ocean to a place forgotten by maps, Mallet Island. As Dante stepped onto the pier, the island itself seemed to inhale. It was a place where the air felt thick and oily, a gothic fortress of towering spires and crumbling stone that groaned under the weight of an ancient, demonic pulse. The castle was not merely a building, it was a living extension of Mundus's will, a cathedral of despair where the very shadows seemed to have teeth. Inside the grand hall, the first terrors revealed themselves. These were the marionettes, macabre, wooden puppets animated by the malevolent spirits of the damned. They did not move like living things, they twitched and jerked, their joints clicking with the sound of snapping bone as they wielded jagged blades and heavy firearms. They were the discarded husks of the castle's former inhabitants, possessed and repurposed for the Dark Emperor's amusement. Alongside them floated the sin scissors and sin scythes, spectral, hooded entities that phased through the solid masonry. They drifted like ghosts through the hallways, their giant, rusting shears snapping through the air with a metallic ring that echoed through the vaulted ceilings. Dante moved deeper into the labyrinth, encountering the bioorganic experiments that prowled the lower levels. There were the Blades, reptilian soldiers encased in chitinous armor, and the Frosts, elite demonic warriors who commanded the absolute zero of the void. In the damp, dark corners, the Beelzebubs, grotesque, oversized insects, scuttled across the walls, a reminder that on Mallet Island, even the smallest life forms had been corrupted into instruments of slaughter. As Dante ascended the spiral staircases and crossed the moonlit battlements, he encountered the elite generals of the Prince of Darkness. The first was Phantom, a mountain of molten stone and obsidian. This volcanic spider was a creature of immense pride and ancient lineage, and in his glowing eyes, he recognized the aura of Sparda. Their clash was one of fire and steel, a test of Dante's resolve against the raw power of the earth's core. Next came Griffin, the thunderbird of the skies. Unlike the mindless beasts of the castle, Griffin possessed the heart of a warrior. He challenged Dante across the rooftops and the Colosseum, his lightning-streaked wings casting long, jagged shadows over the ruins. Yet, for all their power, Mundus showed no mercy to those who failed. When Griffin fell, exhausted and broken, it was not Dante who delivered the final blow, but the Dark Emperor himself, executing his loyal general for the crime of defeat, a cold reminder of the tyranny Dante was here to end. Finally, there was Nightmare, a horrifying mass of shifting, biometallic slime. Nightmare was not a creature so much as it was a living weapon, a fluid nightmare that absorbed the memories of its enemies and turned them into physical manifestations of their own internal fears. The architecture of the island began to warp as Dante journeyed closer to the heart of the mystery. He found himself slipping into mirror worlds, distorted reflections of reality where the laws of physics were rewritten. He stood in the center of a grand Colosseum, a place built not for sport, but for the ritualistic execution of those who dared to defy the throne. Below the surface lay the catacombs of the failed, a damp network of tunnels filled with the bones of those who had attempted this journey before him. He found a massive, ghostly demonic ship anchored in a subterranean cove, its tattered sails catching a wind that shouldn't exist. He walked through the chamber of sins and stood before the statues of time, strange, sacrificial altars that demanded the blood of demons to grant the traveler a moment of respite. These statues were the only mercy the island offered, allowing Dante to trade the crystallized souls of his enemies for the strength to continue. Throughout this descent into madness, Dante found that the island itself provided the means for his survival, provided he had the strength to claim them. In a grand library, he encountered Alastor, a sentient broadsword of living lightning. The blade did not simply wait to be picked up, it impaled Dante through the chest in a violent, electrifying ritual of bonding. Only by surviving the surge of high-voltage energy did Dante earn the right to wield the form of lightning, his very soul merging with the steel. Later, beneath the floor of a cathedral, he discovered the Ifrit gauntlets. To claim them, he had to endure the searing heat of hellfire, proving his spirit was hotter than the flames of the netherworld. He salvaged the Nightmare Beater, a green, glowing firearm of alien design that fired ricocheting beams of energy, and he found a heavy grenade gun dropped by a fallen devil hunter whose journey had ended in the shadows. Dante gathered the fragments of the world to rebuild the bridge to the Emperor. He collected blue orbs, the shattered fragments of great demon souls that bolstered his own life force, and rare untouchables, vessels of purified light essence that granted him temporary invincibility against the darkness. To navigate the castle's shifting locks, he had to secure the Staff of Hermes, a relic that acted as a bridge between the physical and spiritual planes, and the Philosopher's Stone, the stabilizing core required to keep the gate to the Underworld from collapsing. He hunted for the Chronos key to bend the flow of time and the trident to unlock the path through the drowned sections of the fortress. Every item, every key, and every ritual was a step toward the final confrontation. As the journey neared its end, the island's purpose became clear. It was a giant, elaborate sacrificial altar, and Dante was the intended offering. He had fought through the puppets, the ghosts, and the gods of the castle, earning his weapons through blood and fire. With the Staff of Hermes in hand and the fire of Ifrit in his veins, the son of Sparda stood ready to leave the world of man behind and enter the dark heart of the netherworld itself. The time for side quests was over, the final door was opening, and the Prince of Darkness was waiting in the silence beyond. As Dante climbed higher into the heart of the castle, a strange, magnetic pull began to vibrate against his chest. The half-amulet left to him by his mother, Eva, was no longer silent, it was calling out to its other half, an identical silver relic that had been lost on the night of the fire. The closer he came to the throne, the more the two pieces yearned to be reunited, their resonance acting as a compass through the dark. It was this pull that led him to his final confrontation with Nelo Angelo. In the high, moonlit courtyard, the armored knight stood waiting. He was a figure of cold, obsidian perfection, his movements governed by a helm of submission that forced his noble spirit to serve the Prince of Darkness. But as they clashed, the cold blue flames of Nelo Angelo's aura began to flicker with a desperate familiarity. These flames were more than just energy, they were the manifestation of a soul struggling against its chains. This was a duel of destiny, a tragic reunion where every strike of their blades served only to power the connection between the two brothers. When the armor finally shattered and the helm fell away, the truth was revealed in a flash of blinding light. Nelo Angelo was not a monster, but Vergil, the brother Dante had mourned for decades. In his final defeat, Vergil did not die a mortal death, he dissolved into a lingering spirit, leaving behind only his half of the amulet. As Dante held the two pieces together, they fused into the Perfect Amulet, restoring the full legacy of Sparda and igniting a fire in Dante's heart that even the depths of hell could not extinguish. With the amulet restored, Dante's true nature began to shift, revealing the complex metaphysics of his power. This is the essence of the devil trigger, not merely a transformation into a beast, but the moment where Dante's human emotions and his demonic heritage reach a perfect, violent harmony. In the world of the supernatural, it is a common belief that demons are defined by their lack of heart, yet for the son of Sparda, his human emotion is his greatest weapon. It is the fuel for his incredible feats. When he performs the air hike, he is not simply jumping on air, he is momentarily solidifying his own spiritual energy into a platform, a testament to his mastery over the unseen world. His round-trip technique allows him to throw his blade and command it with telekinetic precision, a skill inherited from the blood of his father. Every move he makes, the piercing thrust of the stinger and the crushing descent of the helm breaker, is a piece of his heritage, a language of combat passed down through generations. Even his tendency to taunt his enemies is more than just bravado. In the metaphysics of style, confidence is a weapon. By refusing to show fear, Dante maintains a spiritual dominance over the creatures of the dark, turning his flair and charisma into a literal shield against despair. To understand why Dante's journey is so vital, one must look at the cold, predatory biology of the demon world. Hell is a society built upon a singular, ruthless economy, the consumption of soul energy. Demons do not eat or sleep as humans do, they exist to harvest the life force of others, refining it into the red orbs that litter the battlefield like crystalline blood. This is a world of constant, forced evolution. We see this in the Sargasso, the floating, skeletal heads that drift through the void, and the plasma, shape-shifting entities that mimic the forms of their prey to better hunt them. Even the fetish, an evolved version of the marionette, represents a deeper level of demonic possession, where the spirit has merged more completely with its wooden vessel. Species like the Cyclops are younger, less developed relatives of the Great Phantom, showing a hierarchy of power that stretches back to the dawn of time. Yet, for every success in the netherworld, there are 1,000 failures. The creatures known as nobodies are the tragic results of failed demonic creations, beasts that lack a true identity or purpose, existing only as warped, erratic shadows of what they were meant to be. This same mechanical coldness is seen in the blade soldiers, whose armor is not worn but grown as demonic iron directly from their chitinous skin. In the empire of Mundus, there is no room for the weak. Failure is not met with punishment, but with absolute erasure from existence. To fall in battle is to have your essence recycled into the red economy of the island, leaving nothing behind but the echoes of a name. As Dante descends into the final gate, he carries with him the weight of all these lost souls, a human heart beatings in a realm of cold stone and iron, ready to prove that the light of a single soul is worth more than the entire dark history of the Underworld. This final segment brings the legend of Mallet Island to its dramatic and ethereal conclusion. The pace here moves from the heavy, godlike weight of Mundus into a final, soaring resolution, ending with a quiet, reflective tone perfect for a snooze and side quest sign-off. Beyond the physical walls of the castle, Dante stepped into a realm that defied every law of the mortal world. Here, the Prince of Darkness, Mundus, did not appear as a monstrous beast of claws and shadow, but as a mockery of the divine. He manifested as a towering, white marble statue of a serene deity, a false god anchored to a form of stone and light. This was Mundus's ultimate deception, a persona of grace intended to hide a heart of absolute malice. As the battle began, the reality of the chamber dissolved, replaced by an infinite, swirling void where Mundus exerted total control over space and time. He was represented by 3 glowing eyes that drifted in the ether, an omniscience metaphor that signaled he saw everything, knew every weakness, and controlled every facet of the artificial life he had created. For Mundus, this was not just a duel, it was the final crushing of a rebellion that had begun 2,000 years ago with Sparda. He viewed Dante not as a man, but as a loose thread in his perfect empire of shadow, a mistake to be erased from the tapestry of existence. But even a god of the void could not account for the redemption of a puppet. In the heat of the conflict, Trish, the creature made to be Dante's undoing, found the spark of humanity that Mundus thought impossible. In a moment of ultimate sacrifice, she cast herself into the path of the Emperor's light to save the man she was born to betray. This act of genuine love broke the final seal on Dante's soul. In his grief and rage, Dante did not just trigger his power, he awakened the full, transcendent spirit of Sparda. His sword, the Force Edge, transformed, shedding its dormant shell to reveal the true, jagged, and glowing form of the Sparda blade. Wielding the very strength that had once sealed the Netherworld, Dante took flight into the void. The battle was of apocalyptic proportion, a clash of two beings of godlike power that shook the foundations of the Underworld. When the smoke cleared and the false god was broken, Dante did not kill Mundus, for a being of such darkness can only be contained. He sealed the Emperor once more into the marble vault of the Netherworld, condemning him to an eternity of silence. As the gate slammed shut, the anchor holding Mallet Island together began to disintegrate. The living space of the castle, fueled by Mundus's presence, started to dissolve into the sea. Walls that had stood for centuries crumbled into ash, and the demonic energy that had animated the puppets and ghosts ebbed away like a retreating tide. In the wreckage of the collapsing fortress, Dante found Trish, her life restored by the very energy of the explosion. Together, they fled the island on a derelict biplane as the sun began to break over the horizon for the first time in an eternity. Behind them, the gothic spires of Mallet Island sank beneath the waves, leaving no trace of the nightmare that had nearly consumed the world. The bridge was closed, the debt was paid, and for the first time since his mother's death, Dante was no longer a man running from his past. The legacy of Sparda had finally been claimed. As Dante returned to his shop in the city, his philosophy had crystallized into something deeper than mere vengeance. He understood now that being a devil hunter was not just about the hunt, it was about the protection of that fragile, human spark that even the Prince of Darkness could not replicate. He changed the name of his shop once more, or perhaps he simply realized its true meaning: devils never cry. It was an acknowledgement that when a demon finds a heart, they gain the ability to mourn, to love, and to sacrifice, the very things that make life worth living. Yet, the tragedy of Vergil lingered in the back of his mind, a silver amulet resting against his chest as a reminder of the brother who had chosen the dark. The Underworld now spoke the name of the son of Sparda with a new kind of terror. They knew that a guardian stood at the gate, a man who possessed the strength of a demon and the tears of a human. The legend of the Dark Knight lived on, not in the pages of dusty books, but in the red coat of a man waiting for the phone to ring, ready for the next side quest in a world that could finally sleep in peace.